Hello and welcome to the audio conference, Stressed Out, Beat Down, and Fed Up Employees, How to Win Them Back and Get Them Reengaged. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question and answer session. Before we begin, I would like to introduce your presenter, Jeff Garton. Jeff is a best-selling career author, certified coach, inspirational speaker, and syndicated columnist on HR topics. Jeff coined the terms and published the first books and learning resources on career contentment and the job seeker success mindset and how to achieve it. His works on these exciting new topics have been featured on Fox & Friends, ABC Sunday Morning, NPR, Voice America Radio, in the Wall Street Journal, Kiplinger, and Christian Science Monitor. Now I would like to turn the call over to Jeff Garton. Jeff, you may begin.
Chandler. Hi, folks, and thanks for attending this event. As we all know, these are tough times, and right now about a quarter of the workforce is unemployed or they're underemployed in jobs that they need but they don't actually want. And then the balance of the workforce, it's like that new TV show, The Walking Dead. I'm talking about the live ones, though. They feel lucky to be alive, but outside their cubicle, the world they once knew seems to be coming apart. But at least they have jobs. But they're not entirely happy or enthused, and they've got no place else to go. Some of them are just present and partially conscious. Today I'm going to talk about how to turn this situation around, but not by traditional means. In addition to making employees satisfied and engaged, I'm talking about teaching people how to recognize contentment with what they have and then leverage that contentment as a source of resilience to persevere regardless of work conditions that employers can't always make satisfying. So what I'm talking about here today is how to have career contentment without job satisfaction. I'm going to go to slide 2 now if you'll follow along with me. This is me here. This is my photo, and this is where I work from, Lincolnshire, Illinois, and a little bit about me that Amber's already talked about. What I'd like you to do is write down my email, jeffgarton@careercontentment.com. And for a couple of reasons. One, if you don't get to ask a question today, feel free to send me a question, and I will do my best to answer it. And also, if you would like more information on the topic of career contentment, I can send you a couple articles and also some links to some YouTube videos on that topic. Slide 3. These are some of the learning resources that we use for our career coaching, our online training, as well as our classroom training. The book in the middle, Career Contentment, is the first book on the topic of career contentment, and that was published by the American Society of Training and Development in 2008. Slide 4. These are our learning objectives. And by attending this event today, you're going to be able to explain why the beneficial effects of traditional motivation programs are temporary at best, and you'll also be able to talk knowledgeably about this topic of career contentment, and also some of the research that supports it as an additional approach to employee motivation. Now, something I like to say up front is when you're talking about this topic, stressed out, beat down, and whining and complaining, and I'm sorry that we have to cover some negative topics, and so I encourage you to just focus on the solution. It's necessary to talk about the bad parts, but I want you to focus instead on the solution as we go through this. So let's go to slide 5. So as we go through this presentation, I'm going to be challenging some long-standing beliefs about job satisfaction and employee engagement. I believe both of these things are important and good for employees, but there's some issues that I want to discuss. And with an HR background myself, it took a long time for me to let go of all of the importance that I put on satisfaction and engagement. In fact, writing that first book, I had a 2-year writer's block where I was just having a hard time struggling with the idea that there's alternatives out there to job satisfaction, employee engagement. So what I want you to do, what I really want you to understand here today, what I'm talking about is take off your HR hat. Suspend making any judgments and just listen listen to how what I'm saying affects you personally. In other words, personalize what I'm saying to your own career. And what I want you to understand is this. Contrary to our popular thinking, or our most common thinking, employees are not directly motivated by job satisfaction or engagement programs. People are directly motivated by their emotions caused by what they think, which employers can't control. And furthermore, job satisfaction and employee engagement are not human emotions. They're conditions. They're controlled by employers, which means you can't have either without the job and the rewards that are budgeted for by employers. Now, contentment, on the other hand, contentment is a human emotion. By reasoning alone, using your thoughts, you can choose to be content with or without a job or job satisfaction. So, employers control jobs and the means to satisfy, while you control your career and contentment. Now, it's important that you understand this distinction, because not unless you decide first that you're content to work somewhere and stay there can employers hire you, make you satisfied or engaged, or even try to retain you. So, your control from within over the emotion of career contentment always trumps an employer's outside efforts to persuade you. Now, this is a psychological fact that we tend to ignore, or we try to oppose, which only works temporarily. And that helps us understand why employees feel stressed out, beat down, and fed up despite all your hard works to try and make them satisfied and engaged. Let's go to slide 6. Here's another fact every HR person knows. Employees will take everything you give them. They'll ask for more and still complain, and then they'll leave when it's convenient for them to leave, and that sometimes without regard to the employer. Now, what I'm saying here is that human needs and wants are insatiable. The more we're given, the more we want. And also, the idea, as you know already, the idea of employee loyalty is long gone. As a result, employees are swayed left today by jobs and rewards they realize are here today, but could be gone tomorrow. All these things are important, but they're transient. Now, despite these challenges, job satisfaction and employee engagement are still the primary tactics we rely on to persuade employees to be loyal, happy, and enthused about making employers profitable. Now, when I worked in HR at the Miller Brewing Company, my background is with Kraft Foods and Miller Brewing, the whole career with Philip Morris companies. When I was in HR at Miller Brewing, we used to say that our job was controlling the smoke and mirrors. In other words, creating the illusion that makes employees believe that they're happy and they want to be there, when actually behind the scenes we were treating employees as expendable resources. Yikes. We were moving them about and trading out the bad ones for better ones all along, and they knew this was going on. They knew this was going on. So now here's the problem. Slide 7. Over the years, we've come to believe that the illusion or the magic we're creating is real. That we sometimes think we have the power to motivate and enthuse employees at will by giving them a job and implementing a new program to make them satisfied and engaged. And in fact, we have tons of research that confirm our magical abilities. However, that's a big however, that data from all of these resources here, that data doesn't explain how or why the results are temporary, or why employees continue to complain and quit after we've made them satisfied and engaged, and then this is a very important point here, why other employees are still able to persevere and perform well despite their lack of satisfaction. So why is that? Now, I have the answer for you, and it's an important answer. But first, let's go a little step further. Let's examine one of the consequences of maintaining this illusion. Slide 8. We attract, motivate, and retain employees with the prospect of being made satisfied or the threat of losing what satisfaction they have. Then we we measure and we report the results of our job satisfaction efforts and programs as we continue doing the things that make employees dissatisfied. Now, even if you don't talk about it, so much emphasis is placed on job satisfaction that employees, they get out of bed and they drive to work wondering not about how to do a better job, but why am I not satisfied? I deserve more than I'm getting. Look at all the work I'm doing. The least they can do is give me more of this or give me more of that. You see, we've unintentionally made job satisfaction the holy grail of employment. And the funny thing is, there's no guarantees with it. As I said before, jobs and rewards are here today, but they could be gone tomorrow. Now, here's why there are no guarantees. Slide 9. See, what's going on behind that, the smoke and mirrors is that actually employers don't even have control over all the factors that can contribute to a person's dissatisfaction. We don't have control, for example, over the global economy, competition, weather, war, terror, all of these things here. And particularly, we don't have control over how employees think. And so by causing employees to expect satisfaction and not being able to deliver on point all the time, employers are inadvertently contributing to the very dissatisfactions that we're investing in year after year after year to prevent. Slide 10. So dissatisfaction and disengagement are the consequences of making employees' happiness and productivity codependent on employers. It's the unintended consequences. And even though making employees happy, that's not really why employers are in business. And I was constantly reminded of that when I was in HR at Miller and Kraft. I wanted to do more of this, more of that, and I was always reminded, we're not in business to make these people happy. There's only so much that we can do. Now, an important point here on this slide 10 is that employees have become so focused on wanting satisfaction, or they have we sometimes refer to that as having a sense of entitlement, that they've lost sight of that ability they have to perform well despite conditions that are less than satisfying. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to talk more about this term self-transcendence, which is exactly what career contentment is all about. But first, what do I mean when I say by our conditioning people? Let's go to slide 11. My career in human resources started in 1978. And back then we were called the personnel department. And this was our job, which was to make workers satisfied so that we got out of them what we wanted. And these are some of our tactics that you see listed here. We attract, remunerate, satisfy, and motivate. And after a while, we realized these things weren't really working. They weren't having the effect we wanted. And in the 1980s, we began this effort to make employees engaged. And so we began developing, involving, communicating all of these new programs and tactics. And because they weren't exactly any more transactional, we liked what we did, and we called ourselves human resources. We're doing something entirely different. But when these tactics began to run out of steam and didn't work in the 1990s, we did more to engage people. We implemented self-directed teams. We implemented an alignment program with purposes and collaboration. All of these things here, and we liked what we did. And now, because we're so more focused on the business, we're realizing what we're doing is beneficial to the business. We decided to call ourselves business partners now, or partners to the business. And I know in some states that's still a big buzz term for the HR function, but I got to tell you, when the HR function was originally created, we were never intended to be partners to the business. It was intended that we were to enhance the partnership between employees and the business. But by focusing so much on the business as a partner, during that 1990s and onward, we began we weren't as focused as much apparently on the employees, and we began massive layoffs, job elimination, reductions of wages and benefits, and literally, some people would say that we went so far as to mistreat people. And starting in 2000 and thereon, we began realizing issues with corporate sustainability and all of this, the reactions of people toward corporations and what they're doing and mistreating people. So in year 2000, we began to make amends with what we did. We went back in time and we pulled out all of these old programs and re-resurrected them and implemented them again, but with greater sensitivity to the needs of people in light of how they've been treated or mistreated. We liked what we did, and we called ourselves talent managers or human capital managers and so forth. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. But this is how we've, over time, conditioned people. And here's the point. If we go to slide 12, everything that we've done, all the billions of dollars we spend annually to make people happy and enthused, and billions more to make them engaged, the results were only temporary, which is why in the flyer that was sent out to you for this program, I said that despite all of these efforts and conditioning that we've done, the children of boomers today are still complaining about the same job dissatisfactions that the parents of boomers complained about decades ago. Long hours, rising costs, shrinking pay and benefits, lack of recognition and poor supervision. We've heard it all before. Why is this happening? Which gets back to the topic of this presentation. Let's go to slide 13. What's wrong with this picture? Well, that's the question. Why are employers continuing to cause employees to expect satisfaction when we know that complete satisfaction is never possible? Then why do we spend more to make employees engaged? And why should we make employees engaged in jobs that supposedly they want and fight for and prefer to keep? Why should we have to make them engaged? And then employers spend more to fix those same reoccurring dissatisfactions they thought we fixed the year before. Long hours, rising costs, shrinking pay and benefits. These, as I say here, these are all the 21st century solutions we still rely on to manage people. Why? The next slide. Because the data says so. We've got all of this wonderful data from Gallup and all of these other organizations that say it's worth your time and effort and return on investment to make workers satisfied and engaged, and that's true. But never mind, the results are always temporary at best. Human needs, as I want, are always insatiable, and we're continuing to make people unhappy. And this is one point, the last point here, we haven't talked about yet, but we will soon. People become apathetic when required to fulfill purposes other than their own. Now, employers are realizing, maybe it's time for a new approach, but they don't know what to do. Next slide, slide 15. The solution employers and HR departments are looking for, it already exists. It's already there in the minds and hearts of their workers. And I'm referring to how people are capable of managing their self-motivation, natural engagement, and good performance without depending on employers to make them satisfied or engaged. Think back to your own career in situations where you weren't happy. You hadn't been made satisfied. You hadn't gotten that promotion you wanted. You still pulled through. You made it happen. Now, starting with this slide, I'm going to begin talking more specifically about this idea of career contentment, which for a long time has been misunderstood and overlooked as the source of emotional resilience that people rely on to persevere and perform well despite challenges caused by the lack of satisfaction, or how we rise above our challenges or self-transcend. And to understand how this works, we're going to start looking at some of the research starting on the next slide, 16, with Abraham Maslow. We all know Abraham Maslow. Maslow said the pinnacle of human achievement is this self-actualization, and to get there, you need this plus this and this plus this and this to be fulfilled. You need all of these preceding needs fulfilled sequentially to reach that self-actualization. And over time, what happens was employees would take this pyramid and they say, I don't have this, or I don't have enough of this, or I don't have enough of this. And so what Maslow unintentionally did is he gave people this little cheat sheet that enabled them to pinpoint what's not working or what they lack to achieve that self-actualization. But before he died, in 1970, Maslow said, I got it all wrong. I need to add this extra layer on this pyramid, which he did. And what Maslow said was, yes, self-actualization is still very important. Yes, fulfilling all of these needs sequentially is still very important. However, he said, when these needs are deficit through what he called self-transcendence, you can still achieve self-actualization. And self-transcendence involves the self-regulating of your thoughts and emotions to rise above deficit conditions and circumstances. Now, Maslow got the ball rolling, and it rolled. And in starting in 1990 through 2000, it's what George Bush Sr. called the decade of the brain. That's when through the introduction, as a result of the introduction of new scanning technology, research on human behavior and motivation just really took off. And it was during that 10-year period that we had introduced to us all of these new areas of study like resilience, self-efficacy, effective events theory, which we're going to talk about today, positive psychology, emotion regulation, inner work life, and also career contentment. All of this really is what Maslow had called this idea of self-transcendence. Slide 17. So Maslow was right. What he said, and these researchers helped us to come to this realization. Employees are not motivated by their satisfying or dissatisfying working conditions. They're motivated directly by their emotions caused by what they think, or what Martin Seligman and Chris Peterson, the co-founders of positive psychology, said was, we don't live in response to our circumstances, good or bad. We live in response to our emotions caused by what we think of them. So the implication here is that our HR programs work only to the extent that people allow themselves to be persuaded. Otherwise, those programs are powerless compared to how a person thinks. So even in, and this gets back to the title, so even in satisfying work conditions, employees might choose to be miserable. And in dissatisfying work conditions, they might choose to be happy as a lark, which is the whole point of that Discovery Channel program called Dirty Jobs, hosted by Mike Rowe. He's showing us how people are able to have this career contentment despite the lack of job satisfaction or working in dissatisfying work conditions. So what's the real problem here? Slide 18. The real problem, the real problem is not that employees are dissatisfied. The real problem on slide 19, the problem is that employees are never satisfied. They're never completely satisfied except on a temporary basis. The real, more serious problem is we forgot to teach people this whole idea of self-transcendence, how to be content with their work without complaining about conditions that, I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do about that weather, war, terrorism, the economy, all of these things. We can't control that. We can't make it any more satisfying than it is. So, where did this lead us? Slide 20. When I wrote the book, Career Contentment, I looked at, I was struggling with this, seriously struggling with this idea that my whole career was focused on job satisfaction and engagement, and it didn't work. I couldn't accept that. And I started, before publishing the book, I looked at research on job satisfaction in North America, Asia, and in continental Europe during this period 80 to 2008. And what I discovered was this. People who are under 30 or over 50 consistently or perpetually were dissatisfied with their work conditions. 25 to 35% of these people dissatisfied with their work conditions. Never happy. People who were aged 30 to 50, that churn and burn area, they were even less happy. 48 to 60% of 60% of these people were dissatisfied, perpetually dissatisfied with their work conditions. Now, when you dig a little deeper into this research, it gets even more interesting. This is what I found on slide 21. Despite their ongoing or perpetual lack of satisfaction with their work conditions, most of these people would rather not be in any other job or any other career. They were actually content with their work and career, 77 to 89% of them, despite their ongoing or persistent lack of job satisfaction. What hit me like a ton of bricks here is that right here at the bottom. What keeps people in their jobs and productive despite their dissatisfactions is their decision to be content. And we just haven't found a way to exploit this or to leverage it to benefit the business. Let's go to slide 22. Now this is some research, and it's a little outdated today, but I'll update it for you in just a minute. Research from the National Opinion Research Center, NORC, at the University of Chicago. They have this National Social Survey that they've completed every year back to 1971. And their data shows that despite the ongoing dissatisfaction in the workforce throughout my entire career, nevertheless, 83% of workers say they are content with their work and career. We've completely overlooked this. And during that same period, Gallup and others continued reporting how people are so dissatisfied. Currently, Gallup is reporting that about 72% of workers are disengaged, and 18% are actively disengaged, or they're actually undermining the efforts of their coworkers. They're an impediment to business. And I think the dissatisfaction statistics are a little higher as well, closer to 64% or something like that. And in these studies, the funny thing is when we look at all of these job satisfaction studies, what we're not asking people is, despite your lack of satisfaction, are you content with your work and career? Have you put yourself in the right job and career? Then we haven't taught them how to be content without complaining. Let's go to slide 23. This is some work with Marcia Bench and her emphasis on what she calls authentic vocation, and it works like this. Career is the pursuit of contentment. It's not the pursuit of transient job satisfactions and rewards that we don't control. It's the pursuit of our own contentment. It works like this. We get into this employment mindset mode where we want to look for something else. So after we start a job, we get into this career contentment phase, and we have career contentment with or without dissatisfaction. And then suddenly we get back into this employment mindset level. We get a new calling, and then we change jobs or careers again. And so careers flow independently of any one employer or occupation toward the direction of our unfulfilled purposes. Now listen here. A fundamental aspect, I remember I asked you to take your HR hat off and think in terms of yourself. A fundamental aspect of your ability to have the career that you want is that humans are not resources to employers, but really employers are resources to you. As you age and your interests evolve, so do your intentions or career purposes for working. So in order for you to stay on track, this circle here, stay on track to fulfill your evolving purposes, you need the liberty to make changes to your job and career independently of any one employer or occupation, particularly if you believe in that situation that your current employer is unable to fulfill your purposes. Now, the notion that you have the liberty to pursue your individual purposes has roots in America's war for independence. Now, For 100, now I'm giving you a little history lesson that you've already learned this way back when, but I'm just going to give you a little reminder. For 100 years following that War of Independence, the U.S. government banned corporations in America to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of we the people, so that you and I could pursue our own career contentment. Now, after the American Revolution, state governments chartered corporations to fulfill human purposes. By that I mean to build roads, canals, bridges, hospitals, and schools. And then the government dissolved those corporations after the jobs were done. Not until 1886 could corporations continue to exist as their own individual entities and decide their own purposes. And New Jersey was like one of the first, New Jersey Corporation and so forth. To this day, the government still regulates corporations to protect the civil liberties, health, and safety of people. So this whole idea of contentment goes way, way, way back, and since becoming partners to the business, we've gotten a little off track of this, which again, this is why employees are kind of feeling stressed out, beat down, or beat up despite efforts to make them satisfied and engaged. Let's go to slide 24. So it's this whole idea of career contentment that helps us finally understand why some of these workers out there are able to stay in their jobs and remain happy and productive in those dirty jobs sometimes despite those dissatisfying work conditions. Rosie, as the sign says here, has self-transcendence. And this comes from the work of Al Siebert in the area of what we now call resiliency strengths. It's all right there. In the next slide, slide 25, career contentment, this new topic helps us also to understand why employees leave good jobs, sometimes with less income or benefits or other things to make them satisfied, because they're on this track to pursue and fulfill their own purposes, not an employer's purposes for hiring them. Slide 26. So what is this career contentment stuff? It took me 4 years to write this 8-word definition. Career contentment is an inner decision made without regard to outer conditions. In other words, you can have career contentment with or without traditional job satisfaction. Now, career contentment it's actually 3 things. It's a process, emotion, and an end result. And the distinction is, as a process, it's that self-transcendence, that ability to regulate your thoughts and emotions to manage your career in accordance with your authenticity. So the advantage resulting from this career contentment process is this is the key to your self-motivation. Your get up and go to do what you want in your lifetime. It's also an emotion, a human emotion. And that it gives you that self-empowering ability to function without regard to whether your circumstances are satisfying or not. So as an emotion, career contentment is that source of our enduring resilience to persevere and perform well, even in those dirty jobs. And then finally, career contentment is end result. And this is where we think, when we talk about job satisfaction, it's not actually satisfaction. It's really career contentment. Satisfaction is changes by the minute. Career contentment is a little bit more permanent. As an end result, it's that peace, pleasure, and pride derived from doing what you think you're supposed to be doing, fulfilling your purposes. And so the advantage in this case is career contentment is the source of your natural engagement in the fulfillment of your purposes. Whereas in comparison, what we talk about as employee engagement is really artificial engagement in the fulfillment of the employer's purposes, to make that distinction. Slide 27, the importance about this is that, these 3 advantages you see down at the bottom, they're not going to be the result of making workers satisfied and engaged because, as we said earlier, these outside conditions are not human emotions and therefore don't motivate people. Only people can create these three advantages by control of their career contentment. Slide 28. And I like making emphasis on this point here. Career contentment is not about the corner office, company car, or expense account, or anything like that. It's about learning how to appreciate what you already have without complaining as you continue working toward what you desire. Now that opens up a whole new can of words. What do people desire? What do people desire that would make them have contentment in a job where they're dissatisfied? That's where we get into research from another individual. We have three options in working: a job, a career, or calling. And as we say here, workers can choose to be content despite dissatisfying conditions when they judge that their work is meaningful to their most valued purposes for working. I'm on slide 29, and I'm about to go to slide 30. So here on slide 30, we see the purposes. Why workers take jobs is to pay bills, put food on the table, improve their lifestyle. And if somebody wants to go to the option of a career, it's to make contributions, achieve certain recognition, and improve their own development, and so forth. But this idea of self-actualization or a person's calling is actually their highest purpose, which is to fill their deep interests and their authentic vocation, as Marcia Bench says. Now let's take a look at slide 31, where the problems come in, according to Harry Levinson, a former psychologist and former professor at Harvard. And you may have read his now classic article, Management by Whose Objectives. What Levinson said is that here's the problem. He says the employer's highest purpose is actually, the only reason they create jobs is to improve productivity, increase profits. And the only reason an employer would focus on the career development is to ensure that they're able to attract, motivate, and retain good talent to fulfill their highest purpose. And when it comes to a person's calling, that's irrelevant to employers. So you see the sort of a mismatch going on here. And here's what Levinson told us back in 1971. Let's go to slide 32. He said, managers expect that workers should adapt their purposes, it's our way or the highway, or they should leave. And to compensate for this emphasis on the employer's purposes, employers, they just make employees satisfied and engaged to appease their discontent. But remember what we said. The advantages, okay, the self-motivation, the resilience, and all of these good things, those come about when workers are in pursuit of their own purposes. Now here's the problem on slide 33. Remember we said that people are motivated by their emotions. We also said that satisfaction is not a human emotion. So this idea of appeasing people by making them satisfied and engaged does not work to appease their discontent, because discontentment is a human emotion that employers can't influence or control. They can only attempt to persuade how employees think. And so here we are, 4 decades later almost, struggling with the same problems that Levinson pointed out, a long time ago, and also a solution. We haven't listened. I know of one company, which is Google. Google makes it possible for people to spend up to about 20% of their time on work that is important to what they think is their purposes. Let's go to slide 34. Effective events theory is another area of research that supports what we're talking about here. Fisher and Weiss created effective events theory. It was later validated by another researcher, Carpanzo. Essentially, what you think causes how you feel and urges what you do. People are self-motivated from within by their thoughts and emotions, not by their outside work conditions. And how they react can be moderated by their personality or contentment. So contentment can be measured using emotional stability, the measurement of emotional stability. People who have higher emotional stability or propensity toward contentment are more resilient to persevere and perform well. Again, all we're doing here on this slide is talking way back to what Maslow said about self-transcendence. We just sort of look these things over. Let's go to slide 35. Another researcher here, Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer out of Harvard University. Teresa describes this stuff as the difference between outer work life and inner work life. Job satisfaction being outer work life and career contentment being inner work life. It works like this. I love sharing this chart with CEOs. Walk with me on slide 35 as I show you how this works on the job satisfaction. You can employees can accept what satisfies, reject what dissatisfies, or they can tolerate or influence what they can't control. Now, what satisfies may cause them to stay, but that keeps them codependent, the golden hen. We don't like that. And what dissatisfies may cause them to quit. That fuels their resentment. We don't like that either. And what they can't control may cause them to complain. That leads to the stress. We don't like that either. So you see, there's some issues going on here with a job satisfaction culture. Let's take a look at the career contentment culture. In this situation, you can perceive what is or was, find middle ground with what could be, or assign better meanings to your circumstances to make them more tolerable. You can leverage those self-transcendence skills to suspend making judgments, to self-regulate higher hope, imagine better or worse to improve your optimism, and learn to recognize your contentment to increase your resilience despite circumstances that can't always be made satisfying. Now, I say to the CEO, which work culture would you like to have? Inevitably, they say, I want the career contentment. Well, we need both. We can't get away from job satisfaction now. But what we can do is start teaching people about career contentment. Slide 36. Now, I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly. I mean, it's self-evident what it's saying, but I'm trying to make a distinction here between outer and inner work life. Employers control the outer. They control jobs and the means to satisfy and keep people engaged to fulfill the employer's purposes. And so from that point of view, humans are resources. Inner work life is a much more employee-centric situation. It's controlled exclusively by employees through their thoughts and emotions to fulfill their own purposes for working. From that point of view, employers are resources. Slide 37. We can't control either one. Employers can't control an employee's inner work life, and an employee can't control their outer work life except through bargaining, ongoing complaining as we're seeing happening, or they can get up and go elsewhere. There is an alternative. That's an important one. Next slide, 38. They can learn how to choose to be content with what they have and remain productive despite all of the conditions that can't be made satisfying by employers. And this is what we are not capitalizing on today. Slide 39. So when we start talking about people's career, we've really been looking at it in two dimensions. And so I want you to think now in terms of four dimensions. Let me explain how this works. Employees control their career contentment or discontentment. That's the dimension we overlooked. We know it's there, but we haven't given it a name. Employers control that outer work life. So if you're in a job you want, you can have career contentment with job satisfaction, which we know is temporary, or without job satisfaction, which we know is inevitable. So the optimum situation is where satisfaction is temporary. Now, the other dimensions that we don't think of is if you're in a job that you need but don't necessarily want, you have career discontentment. But we can still make you satisfied, so you can have career discontentment with job satisfaction or career discontentment without job satisfaction. That's the most intolerable situation, to have neither contentment nor satisfaction. You don't want to be there, you don't want the job, and they don't care about you, and you don't care about them. So what we're trying to do with our training here is teach people, on slide 41, teach people how to have career contentment with or without job satisfaction. One of my favorite stories is, we call him the Sears guy. He was laid off from a pharmaceutical company as one of the heads of their IT function, and he supervised a group of about 20 people, and he was laid off and had been unemployed for over a year. And he took an interim job with Sears selling auto parts, and it was a horrible situation for him. He was beneath himself. He was not doing what he was trained to do, and he was in an embarrassing situation trying to serve people who used to work for him, and he was miserable. And he came to me for help in trying to find a job because his job search was just not successful at all. And the problem was his attitude. You know, not his resume, but his attitude. It had a lot to do with his Sears. So the coaching for career contentment focused on the virtues of working for the sake of working, for the goodness of doing a good job. Get your mind off job satisfaction and expecting Sears to make you satisfied. You're not going to be here for the long haul. Just focus on the virtues of working for the sake of working. Find contentment in doing your best job. So after about 3-4 weeks of that type of coaching on career contentment, his whole life transformed. He really started getting into his job, and then simultaneously his job search just took off. His whole attitude changed, and people could see it. And he ultimately, long story short, he ultimately got a couple of job offers, one for a senior manager position, one for a director position, both paying much more than what he was earning part-time at Sears, and even more than what he was earning before being laid off. And he mentioned to me that one of the employers was concerned about their ability to attract him away from Sears because he seemed so content in what he was doing. Well, of course, he ultimately took the director job, and it's now almost 2 years later, he still has that director's job. And here's the surprising end of the story. He still works part-time at Sears. And I know for this holiday season, he's going to be there every weekend. I stop by and see him every once in a while. He loves talking about his career contentment without job satisfaction. Let's go to slide 42. We're coming near to the end here. Stressed out, beat down. The point of the slide is you still have to make employees satisfied and engaged. We've set the die on that. We've got to do that, and it's important to do it. You want it, and so do I. Next slide, slide 43. But I just want you to remember this. When you start creating this magic with satisfaction and engagement, don't think that it works with contentment. You cannot make employees content. That emotion of contentment is what people use to safeguard their own authenticity, that authentic vocation. Their purposes are going to evolve, and they're going to evolve. The only thing you can do is entice people with these transient jobs and rewards, which is a good thing. But just keep in mind that it may not work. If you are intent on maintaining a job satisfaction culture, be prepared financially to try and keep pace with the insatiable demands of employees for more new and improved satisfaction. That's inevitable. Unless, let's go to slide 44, this is something that I learned from the healthcare industry. I've done work with physicians during this transition in healthcare, and this is what I learned. This is what they pointed out to me after physicians learned about career contentment. They made this analogy. Physicians provide medical care from the outside in. Patients help regulate their own healing from the inside out. And it's the combination of the physician and patient working together that enables wellness. So wellness is really dependent on both people doing their best part. Let's go to 45. This was the learning from that experience. It's the same thing. Employers satisfy and engage from the outside in, and we need that. But also, employees have to do their part from the inside out by regulating their own career contentment. And it's the combination of those things that enables that fulfillment, that self-actualization. So really getting to that point is dependent on both people doing their part. Let's go to slide 46. This is our training model, which I don't think it's a little complicated to talk about without seeing you or you seeing me and pointing to different colors, but the net of this is that career contentment involves hitting on all four cylinders. The four dimensions we train on are thoughts and emotions, choice of work, a person's reasoning abilities, and their self-reliance. If your thoughts and emotions are favorable, you're in the job that's meaningful to your purposes, and your reasoning is to the agreeable middle ground, and instead of either or thinking, either you have satisfaction or you don't, and you're self-sufficient, your self-reliance is self-sufficient, you're managing your own career, you're in a good position to be resilient regardless of your circumstances. That's career contentment. Career discontentment is hitting on only two with 2 cylinders. You're self-sufficient at managing your career, and you don't expect the world. Your reasoning is to the middle ground. But something is wrong. And typically when people experience this career discontentment, they think it's job dissatisfaction, but it's not. They might be experiencing a career calling and not realizing it. So we help them to turn off the complaining and analyze that situation. The worst situation here is job dissatisfaction. That's where they're hitting on all 4 red cylinders. Their job lacks meaning, they're unhappy, and their reasoning is either they have satisfaction or they don't. And they're really codependent on employers making them happy. Job satisfaction, what we think of as the holy grail of employment, is what we call currently not unhappy. It's transient. It's temporary. You come in at 8:30 and you've got job satisfaction, but by 10:30, after 2 meetings and a bad phone call, you've got job dissatisfaction. What's happening here is you're hitting on only 2 cylinders with job satisfaction. Your work is meaningful and your thoughts and emotions are favorable because your employers are making you satisfied. However, you're codependent on employers for making you satisfied, and either you have it or you don't. That's about all I want to talk about on that model. Let's move on to the next slide, 47 and 48. And I don't want to talk about slide 47 and 48 because these are in the handouts that I sent you. Until you make a decision about bringing on a career contentment culture, these are some of the do's on 47 and on page 48, some of the don'ts that you may want to consider in bringing about a career contentment culture. So read that handout. I'm on page 48 now, and then I'm going to go right to page 49, and that's the last slide, page 49. And again, here are some of our learning resources. If you have questions that we don't get to today, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I'd like to send you some articles about career contentment and give you some links to some videos that give you a little bit more information. And with that, Amber, if you'd like to take questions.
Thank you. At this time, we will do the question and answer session. If you have a question, please press 0, then the 1 key on your touch-tone phone, and this will place you into queue. One by one, your lines will be open, so you may each ask your question. So once again, that's 0, 1 on your phone. And our first question came in via email, and it reads, why do people assume that being made satisfied is good and that contentment means laid back or settling for less?
Okay. We think satisfaction is good because that's what we were taught. It's good to have what you want when you want it. But what's funny about that word satisfy, it originates from the Latin terms that translate to the words sad and factitious. Satisfaction is sad and artificial because in order for you to be made satisfied, you're dependent on other people doing things to make you happy. It's something that we don't actually have complete control over. So satisfaction, I get a big kick out of realizing that that's the meaning of it, sad and factitious. On the other hand, contentment, we tend to think that means, you're right, laid back and settling for less. And I've done research on this, and that's not actually what the word meant. The Latin origination means contained and enclosed, meaning from within. And the word satisfaction was created first. The word contentment was created second. When people realized we can't always have what we want when we want it, we're never completely satisfied. So the word contentment was created, meaning from within or contain and enclose. In situations where satisfaction isn't possible, by reasoning alone, we can cause our own contentment until we can turn our situation around. So over the years, that original meaning of the word contentment has been lost. I'm trying to bring it back. And the struggle that I have with that in dealing with Webster, they say, you're right. It makes sense. The problem is we can't just automatically change the meaning of contentment back to its original form because society now thinks of it as being laid back. So I don't know. Eventually, when enough people start understanding the true meaning of contentment, and it goes way back to Aristotle's time, where we go back and look at some of the old quotes on contentment, and you'll see what I mean. Even back to the era of Henry Ford, he truly meant what contentment meant.
Thank you. Our next question also came in via email, and it reads, why would someone choose to be content at a dissatisfying job?
Okay. Well, that's a good question, and the short answer is, if you're getting out of that job what you need to fulfill your purposes, then you can be content with the fulfillment of your purposes. Even though, and so we're making a distinction here between your purposes and conditions, okay? That's a big distinction. So if you're content with the situation that you're in, enabling you to fulfill your purposes, and your purposes might be on the job, or your purpose for working may have nothing to do with on the job, but actually bringing a paycheck home or something else. So if you're in a situation that you realize is fulfilling your purposes, you can recognize your contentment despite situations where you may have a bad boss, difficult coworkers, not enough pay, the wrong benefits, and so forth. You make a compromise. You learn how to make a compromise. You're getting what you need to fulfill your purposes, but you're not getting everything that you want to make you satisfied. The problem is you've got to learn not to complain about what you can't control and take control over what you can, which is how you think, to affect your own contentment. That's the whole focus of what this training is about. Learning how to stop complaining about what you can't control, learn how to take control of what you can, which is how you think, to affect the emotion of contentment, and then leverage that emotion as a source of emotional resilience to help you persevere until you can eventually get what you desire.
Great, thank you. Our next question via email reads, can employees find contentment in an interim job outside their normal career path?
Yes, I think the Sears story kind of illustrates that, and I think that's very critical for HR people to really contemplate on, because so many people are underemployed right now and not happy. How do we deal with these people and under the current circumstances? In other words, how do you go to somebody who's acknowledges their lack of satisfaction, and they realize they're never going to be satisfied in that situation because it's outside their career path, or they're not being paid what they got before? You can't go to an employee and say, we want you to be satisfied. We want you to have job satisfaction. And they're going to look at you and say, what are you, nuts? I used to make $20,000 more a year, and I was doing this, not that. How can I be satisfied in this job? The point here is this whole area of career contentment gives us a new dimension to work with these types of people, helping them to realize, if you're concerned about your health, if you are concerned about your well-being, if you're concerned about this or that or the other, then why make yourself miserable expecting us to make you satisfied in a situation where you're never going to be satisfied? Why don't we talk about how to help you recognize and achieve your career contentment? Let's start there, and then we'll work through these other issues. So I think right now we're in a situation that we are in desperate need of this thing called career contentment. And again, it's already there. It's already there in the minds and hearts of employees, or they'd be gone. They'd already be gone. What's keeping them, what the research says, what's keeping them in their jobs now and productive is their decision to be content. The problem is we forgot to turn off that switch, that complaining switch. They don't know how to do that. And that's again, the focus of this training.
Great, thank you. And that looks like that was our last question, so I'll turn it back to you, Jeff, for any closing remarks.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and the opportunity to talk about this topic, which is near and dear to my heart. And it's becoming near and dear to the heart of many people that I work with as a career coach and a consultant to employers. Thanks to Briefings Media Group. And again, if anybody has a question that didn't get answered, send me your email or give me a call. Or if you'd like some more information on the topic, I'd like to hear from you. Thank you very much, Amber, for your time. Thank you very much. Have a nice holiday season.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference call. To end this call, simply hang up your phone. Thank you.